Let me say something that most people are too afraid to admit out loud. There are men out there, intelligent men, successful men, men who have built real things in this world, who are slowly, quietly, invisibly becoming invisible to the women they want most. Not because they're too old, not because they've lost their looks, not because the world is somehow rigged against them, but because of habits, small, almost undetectable patterns of behavior that are quietly draining them of the very magnetism that once made them irresistible. And the cruelest part, most of these men have no idea it's happening. You might be watching this and thinking, that's not me, I'm doing fine. But I want you to sit with this for just a moment, because what I'm about to share isn't a list of superficial tips. This is a psychological deep dive into the silent patterns that push younger women away from older men, patterns rooted in insecurity, ego, and a fundamental misunderstanding of what real attraction actually is. We're going through 4 of them today, and I'm telling you right now, the last one is the one that most men carry their entire lives without ever realizing it. That one alone has ended more promising connections than almost anything else I've studied. Stay with me, this is going to matter. Here's the thing about attraction. It's not logical. It was never meant to be. Younger women in particular operate from a finely tuned emotional and psychological radar. They don't always know why they feel drawn to someone or repelled by someone. They just feel it, and that feeling is almost always responding to something real, something beneath the surface. Most men, especially older men who've had some success in life, make a critical error. They approach attraction the same way they approach business. With strategy, with performance, with a kind of controlled, calculating energy that might close deals in a boardroom but absolutely kills chemistry in a conversation. And so they miss the signs, they miss the moments where a woman's interest quietly fades. They don't see it happening in real time. They only notice the absence, the unanswered message, the cool tone, the slow drift into nothing. What we're doing today is giving you the awareness most men never develop. Not to manipulate, not to play games, but to understand yourself deeply enough that you stop self-sabotaging and start showing up as the man you actually are. This is about self-respect, emotional intelligence, and the kind of presence that doesn't need to perform because it simply is. Before we go further, if you found yourself in any of what I just described, if you've ever felt that slow distance creeping into a connection and couldn't quite explain why, make sure you subscribe to this channel. I cover the psychology of attraction, masculine energy, and self-mastery in ways you won't find anywhere else. Hit that like button and drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from. I read every single one. Now let's get into it. A man in his 40s, well-dressed, confident on the surface, sits across from a woman 10 or 15 years younger. The conversation starts well, there's a spark, and then almost imperceptibly, something shifts. He starts talking about his car, then his apartment, then his last business trip to somewhere impressive, then his salary not directly but through the story he's constructing, piece by carefully placed piece. He's building a case, a resume, an argument for why she should find him worthwhile. And she feels it. She doesn't label it. She doesn't say to herself, this man is insecure. She just starts to feel slightly exhausted, slightly bored, slightly like the energy in the room has shifted from connection to audition. This is the habit of constant self-promotion, and it is one of the most common and most invisible traps that older men fall into when they're around younger women. Here's the psychology. When a man feels unconsciously threatened by an age gap, when some part of him believes he must justify his relevance, he compensates by flooding the conversation with evidence of his worth. Accomplishments, status, stories of success. It feels to him like confidence. It looks to her like desperation. Real confidence doesn't need a stage. It doesn't need to announce itself. It simply occupies space and lets the world come to it. The man who leans back, who listens more than he speaks, who asks questions that show genuine curiosity about her world rather than performing his own. That man is magnetic in a way that no achievement list ever could be. Here is the mindset shift you need. Your value is not a presentation. It's a presence. Stop selling yourself and start being yourself. Let your curiosity do the talking. Let your stillness communicate your security. Because the moment a woman feels like she's supposed to be impressed, she stops being interested. Impression is passive, connection is active, and only one of those things creates real attraction. That was number one. And it's already making some of you rethink a conversation you had recently. Good. Hold that thought, because number two is where it gets more uncomfortable. There is a generation of men who were taught explicitly or implicitly that emotions are liabilities. Vulnerability is weakness. Sensitivity is dangerous. Depth is something you keep locked in a cabinet and only open in private, if ever. And for a long time, this worked, or at least it didn't visibly fail. Because the women in those men's lives were also trained to expect emotional walls, to accept them, to work around them. But something has shifted. Younger women who have grown up with greater access to psychological language, to therapy culture, to conversations about emotional intelligence, they don't work around walls. They read them. And what they read is not strength. It's fear. It's a man who hasn't done the inner work. A man who confuses control with maturity. I want to be careful here, because I'm not talking about oversharing. I'm not saying pour your traumas on the table on a first date. That is its own form of dysfunction. What I'm talking about is the emotional stiffness that some men wear like armor, the practiced nonchalance, the dismissive humor when something real is on the table, the complete inability to say, that actually matters to me, or I felt something when you said that. Women, especially younger women who have done their own inner work, can feel the difference between a man who is genuinely grounded and a man who is emotionally frozen. And frozen doesn't feel like safety, it feels like isolation. It feels like a future filled with conversations that never go anywhere real. There's a specific moment I've seen described over and over in conversations with women about this. A moment when a man had an opportunity to be real, when the conversation touched something tender, something genuine, and instead of leaning into it, he made a joke, or he changed the subject, or he gave a 3-word answer that closed the door so firmly it might as well have had a lock on it. She remembers that moment. She files it, and the next time something like it comes up, she doesn't even open the door anymore. She already knows what's behind it. The mindset shift, emotional availability, is not weakness. It is the single most powerful form of masculine confidence there is, because it says, I am secure enough in who I am to let you see who I am. I don't need to hide. I don't need to perform toughness to prove I have it. The man who can be still in the face of something emotional, not reactive, not dismissive, but genuinely present, that man is rare, and rare is always attractive. 2 down, 2 to go. And I promise you the final 2 carry more weight than almost anything you've heard before. Number 3 is one that men rationalize endlessly, and it's destroying their attractiveness in slow motion. There is nothing quite as suffocating to a younger woman as a man who is technically in the room but emotionally and mentally living somewhere else. And I'm not talking about distraction. I'm not talking about the man who checks his phone too often. I'm talking about something deeper, something that seeps into the very way a man talks, jokes, references the world, makes sense of himself. I'm talking about the man who is still living in the era of his greatest victories. You know this man. Maybe you've been this man. He talks about what he used to do, who he used to know, how things used to be. His frame of reference is frozen somewhere in a decade where he felt most powerful, most relevant, most alive, and everything in the present is subtly measured against that ghost of a golden time. This is not just about nostalgia. Nostalgia in small doses is human and even charming. This is about identity, a man whose sense of self is tethered to a past self rather than a present one. A younger woman doesn't live in your past, she lives in the now, and she wants a partner who lives there with her. When every conversation loops back to what you achieved 20 years ago, what you looked like, who you were when the world was younger, and so were you, it signals something psychologically critical. It signals that you are not growing, that you peaked and you know it, and the knowing has made you retreat rather than evolve. There's a particular version of this that I want to name directly because it's so common and so destructive. It's the habit of comparison, the older man who compares younger men unfavorably to himself at their age, who dismisses current culture, current music, current ideas, not because he's thought them through and found them lacking, but because they don't belong to his era of greatness. She hears that and she thinks, this man is threatened by the present, and a man who is threatened by the present cannot build a future. The mindset shift. Your past is your foundation, not your identity. The most magnetic older men are the ones who carry their experience lightly, who use what they've learned to engage the present with more depth and curiosity, not less. They're interested. Genuinely, visibly interested in what's new, what's changing, what they don't yet fully understand. That is not immaturity. That is aliveness. And aliveness is one of the most primal things any human being is attracted to. Are you alive right now, or are you a museum exhibit of a life you used to live? That question is not meant to sting, it's meant to open something, because the last habit, number 4, is the one that closes everything. And once you see it, you will never unsee it. This is the habit that most intelligent, self-aware, accomplished older men are absolutely convinced they do not have. And it is the one they carry most consistently, most invisibly, and most harmfully into every interaction with younger women. It doesn't look like arrogance. It rarely announces itself. It hides inside wisdom, inside experience, inside the genuinely good intention of a man who believes he has something valuable to offer. It is the habit of subtle condescension, the unconscious assumption that because you are older, you see more clearly, that because you have lived longer, you understand better, that because she is younger, she is somehow incomplete, and your role, at least in part, is to correct, educate, and refine her. It shows up in the way you finish her sentences, in the slight smile that crosses your face when she says something you've heard before, in the way you reframe her opinions, not aggressively, not cruelly, but with a gentle paternalistic certainty that you are holding the real truth and she is almost there. It shows up when you correct her in front of others, when you offer unsolicited advice about her choices, her career, her friends, her future, when you treat her emotional reactions as symptoms of inexperience rather than as valid responses from a whole, sovereign human being. Here is what she experiences when this happens. She doesn't feel guided. She feels diminished. She doesn't feel like she's with a wise partner. She feels like she's with a man who has subtly decided she is a project, someone to be improved, rather than someone to be known. And the most devastating thing about this habit is that it is almost always rooted in genuine affection. These men are not malicious. They are not consciously belittling. They truly believe they are helping. They believe their experience gives them the right, even the duty to lead, to teach, to correct. But love, real attraction is not a classroom. And the moment a woman starts to feel like a student rather than an equal, something irreversible happens inside her. A quiet closing, a withdrawal, so gradual you might not catch it until she is already gone. I want you to think about something very specific right now. Think about the last time you were in a conversation with a younger woman and you had a strong, certain opinion about something she said or believed. What did you do with that certainty? Did you hold it and keep listening? Or did you deploy it gently, reasonably, but unmistakably to redirect her toward what you already knew was right? Because that moment, that small, seemingly harmless moment, is where attraction either deepens or quietly begins to die. The most irresistible older men I have ever studied, interviewed, or observed share one distinctive quality. They are genuinely curious about her inner world. Not curious the way a teacher is curious about a student's progress. Curious the way you are curious about someone whose perspective genuinely surprises you, challenges you, adds something to your understanding of the world. They don't just tolerate her differences in experience, they find them interesting, they ask about them, they let themselves be changed by them. That is equality, that is respect, and that is the single most powerful force in any deep, lasting attraction between a man and a woman. When a younger woman feels truly seen, not evaluated, not upgraded, not patiently managed, but seen as a complete, complex, worthy human being by an older man who has every cultural permission to be dismissive but chooses presence instead, it is an experience unlike anything else. That is the man she remembers. That is the man she talks about. That is the man she chooses, again and again and again. The mindset shift. Your experience is not a throne. It is a gift you offer only when invited. The greatest wisdom you can demonstrate is the wisdom to know when to stop talking and start listening. To be a student of her, not a teacher to her. Drop the assumed superiority. Not because it's ugly though. It is, but because you are so much more powerful without it. Let's zoom out for a moment. We've talked about 4 habits today: the need to constantly prove your worth, the emotional stiffness that masquerades as strength, the gravitational pull of your past, and the subtle but corrosive condescension of assumed superiority. None of these make a man evil. None of them make him unworthy. They make him human-shaped by culture, by conditioning, by decades of being told that men are supposed to be certain, self-sufficient, superior, and sealed. But this is not 1975, and even if it were, these habits weren't serving men then, either. They were just better hidden. What I want to be clear about is this. Noticing these habits in yourself is not a reason for shame. It's a reason for clarity. The men who do the work, who actually examine the patterns they carry and decide with intention which ones to keep and which ones to let go, those men become genuinely extraordinary. Not because they've changed who they are, but because they've removed everything that was covering up who they are. A younger woman isn't attracted to perfection. She's attracted to authenticity, to depth, to a man who has lived enough to have real scars and who wears them with the kind of quiet dignity that can only come from having made peace with them. Not every situation calls for panic. Not every younger woman who grows slightly distant is reacting to these habits. People are complex. Connections are complex. Sometimes things simply don't align, and that's not a diagnosis of your failure. But patterns are information, and if you find yourself repeatedly experiencing the same kind of slow fading, the same gradual coolness, the same unexplained distance, then it is worth asking, honestly and without defensiveness, what am I bringing to this that might be doing the opposite of what I intend? That question, asked sincerely, is more attractive in itself than almost anything else you could do. Here is what I want to leave you with. Pick one of the 4 habits we covered today. Just one, the one that landed the hardest, the one you felt in your chest a little when I described it. And for the next 7 days, I want you to watch for it. Not to punish yourself when it shows up. It will show up, but to simply notice it. Observe it, say to yourself quietly, there it is, because awareness is always the first act of transformation. You cannot change what you refuse to see, and once you see it, really see it, you cannot unknow it. The man you are becoming is already inside you. These habits are not you. They are layers, conditioning, old armor worn so long you forgot you put it on. Take it off, not for her, for you. Because the truest, most magnetic version of yourself has never needed armor. He has only ever needed courage, the courage to show up, honestly, as exactly who you are. That is the man worth choosing, every single time. If this video gave you something real, a shift, an uncomfortable recognition, even just a question you're now sitting with, please subscribe to this channel. This is the work, not just attraction, not just dating advice, but the deeper work of understanding yourself clearly enough to show up fully in every relationship, in every moment. Hit the like button. It genuinely helps this content reach the men who need it most. And leave me a comment. Tell me which of the 4 habits hit closest to home for you. Or tell me something you've observed in yourself, in someone you know, that connects to what we talked about today. I read every comment. This is a real conversation. You are not too old. You are not too far gone. You are not out of time. You are simply being invited right now to become more of who you actually are. Take the invitation. I'll see you in the next one.